Kenya is witnessing a prolonged dry season brought about by 4 failed rain seasons in many parts of the country. Experts say it is the worst drought Kenya has ever witnessed in the last 40 years. Livestock have died in their thousands, and now even Kenya's national heritage, the wildlife, which is a huge foreign exchange earner through tourism, is feeling the heat, literally. In the last 9 months alone, Kenya has lost at least 1,200 wild animals in some of its renowned national parks and community conservancies. After the world was hit by global COVID pandemic, which crippled various sectors of the country's national economy 3 years ago, the world is facing another problem brought about by the effects of climate change. Kenya is one of the many nations in the Southern Sahara that are suffering from the effects of climate change, which is affecting the tourism sector. Wild animals in national reserves and community conservancies are mostly affected. Areas such as community reserves in Laikipia, Samburu National Park, Amboseli National Park in Kajiado, and Tsavo East and Tsavo West in the larger Taita Taveta County in the southern parts of Kenya are also affected. According to the status of the environment in these areas, it is clear that there hasn't been any rain in the last 2 seasons, a situation that forces locals to be on the move in a bid to save their livestock.
The consequence of that is that our rangelands are desiccating, they are drying up, and they are losing vegetation, they are becoming bare. And that has an implication on our wildlife, our livestock, and also our communities. We are seeing already die-offs of particularly the species that need large volumes of grass and also that require quite regular access to water. And in fact, animals like warthog, giraffe, some of these antelopes that really do not depend on water a lot are also dying because they are staying for a long period without water.
The climate change has increased the frequency of droughts in this area, and the drought usually undermines the productivity of livestock because of poor access to pasture, poor availability of pasture and all this. When animals are exposed to that, their body conditions goes down over the period. There are a lot of losses that occur.
Many rivers have dried up, trees withered, while land in parts of Samburu and Laikipia areas appears to be cracking, a clear sign of the wrath of drought. Here, wild animals too have succumbed to the ravages of drought.
As you are all aware, rainfall in the arid and semi-arid areas of Kenya failed completely in the months of October to December 2021, and also our long rains in the months of March to May 2022. This resulted to the current drought situation that we are experiencing in the southern, eastern, and northern parts of this country.
According to a research led by the Department of Wildlife Research and Training Institute at the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS, more than 1,235 different species of wild animals have died due to long dry season that is currently ravaging at least 23 counties in Kenya. Wildebeest lead in the highest death toll at 512, followed by zebras at 381, elephants at 205, gravy zebras at 49, and 51 buffaloes.
I confirm that different species of wildlife are being affected by the drought, with a total of 14 different species of wildlife being affected between the month of February and October this year.
The report, dubbed Impacts of the Current Drought on Wildlife in Kenya, indicates that deaths of wild animals were due to the long dry season that is being attributed to global warming. Despite the baby boom that was experienced in the last 3 years, Kenya's most loved animal, the magnificent elephant, was also affected, thus affecting its population.
Elephants in Amboseli and Laikipia Samburu region are worst affected by the drought, as the ecosystems have recorded more than 70 elephant deaths.
It's generally a stressful moment to a lot of the people that care about this wildlife. And it's a threat to our tourism, which employs so many Kenyans and that generate foreign exchange to our country. So the ability of the tourism industry to give resources to our government, to provide services to schools, to health centers. So we need to look at it that way, that the impacts of drought is not just about animals dying. It escalates to children going to school, hospitals being provided for with the essential drugs, and security being provided for the country, knowing that 10% of our GDP depends on tourism.
At the Laikipia County, wild animals are supported by special designated conservancies where they get pasture all year round. These areas are well-controlled zones such that some sections are closed to allow grass to grow before they are opened to animals to graze. But the Samburu ecosystem paints a different picture. Less wildlife and the grass is equally scarce. Animal carcasses dot the reserves and community conservancies. In many community conservancies in Samburu and Laikipia, the situation has become so difficult that the pastoralists have had to move in with their livestock in search of water and pasture and save their livelihoods.
The ecosystem plans, and these plans are all geared towards creating, making decisions on how the land is managed. All conservancies have a grazing plan, meaning that you graze livestock in certain areas and not others, and you move livestock throughout the season so that you're not overgrazing the land. And actually we've seen in conservancies that have done very well in grazing plan, the animals there, if you go to the Mara right now, the wildlife are still looking quite good. If you go to the more successful ranches in Laikipia, the wildlife are still holding on.
Over 50% of our herds over drought periods, and the frequency of drought is now increasing, so many people are impoverished. Okay, so at NRT now we are looking for alternatives. What are the alternatives? Maybe connecting to an alternative value chain.
The Laikipia Samburu ecosystem has lost 74 elephants and 49 grebe zebras.
And to get a clear picture of the magnitude of wildlife deaths in community conservancies, we set out on another journey to the southeastern and western parts of Tsavo National Parks, some of the national reserves badly ravaged by the drought.
The Tsavo ecosystem has lost 54 elephants, and this again not counting the 56 that was lost last year. This is for the period between January, February and October this year.
At the Mgeno Community Conservancy that is bordering the Tsavo West National Park, we met this elephant family which was in a state of mourning after the death of their baby elephant. Despite the repugnant smell of rotting carcasses, one by one the jumbos in the family approached the carcass to pay their last respects, then turn back to the sheds under the trees.
If we can lose an elephant, and an elephant is a browser, both a browser and a grazer. If the elephants can die, how about the cows which are primarily grazers? So the pastoral communities are really in there of another catastrophic situation whereby we are not only losing livestock, but we can also be losing people.
Efforts to save elephants and other wild animals in the larger Tsavo ecosystem are being led by several conservation organizations such as the KWS, WWF Kenya, AWF and IFO, among others. Some conservationists taking personal initiatives to save the wild animals.
Most of the wildlife died in the months of August, September and October, with the months of September and October recording the highest number of wildlife deaths due to the drought. The continued worsening of the drought condition could affect more rhinos in the overstocked rhino sanctuary.
Nearby community conservancies have not been spared either. The drought has driven the wildlife to areas they are not supposed to graze. This is the situation in many conservancies in the Tsavo area of Taita Taveta. As you can see, a herd of elephants that have invaded this water point is being chased away by livestock that are also rushing to get water as well. Cases of human-wildlife conflict are on the rise.
The scramble for water between livestock, people, domestic dogs, and wildlife. So the fittest survive in this situation. So how about if we could have more watering points for these animals? Then we will have addressed an issue of at least competition of resources. If we don't do that, then we have lost an entire generation. And if we lose an entire generation and the gestation period takes another 2-3 years, then we are talking about a span of 8 years. So what does that tell us ecologically?
It's saddening that we are having escalation of human-wildlife conflict. The reason being, now human beings, especially our friends whom we work with, the Maasai community, the community we are working in, they are having, they have changed the way they used to do things, that they have now fodder in their homesteads. And the animals are in need of food, so they follow into the homesteads, and the result is a conflict.
Many animal watering points in the wild have dried up, those still harboring some water becoming conflict centers.
I've seen a lot of deaths of wildlife, especially wildebeests and zebras have really been going down, large numbers. Through the data we have collected over time with the ranger fraternity we have, all Gulului community wildlife rangers, we have seen about over 100 animals in general, but among them about 15 of them being elephants in the area, the small area we occupy. So if that is already an indicator, it means we are really in big trouble.
What NRT has done, particularly for wildlife, is to provide water for wildlife so that they don't have to go to the human watering points to conflict over that water with the communities. And so we've provided wildlife with their own water. We've also provided livestock and communities with their own water, and that kind of separates them and keeps them away from the conflict.
While the deaths of wildlife soars, researchers have recorded a minimal effect on the rhinoceros, whose species is very low in Kenya.
The rhino population has not been seriously affected by the drought, with only one rhino aged 2 years having died in Gulia Rhino Sanctuary.
In the Amboseli ecosystem, another wildlife reserve, a gloomy picture was painted in November 2022. The national park is set at the footsteps of the largest mountain in Africa, the Kilimanjaro. Here, ecosystems have been decimated by the drought, pushing wildlife to the neighboring conservancies belonging to the Maasai community. The much one can see are carcasses of wild animals.
Has also lost 510 wildebeest. The Amboseli ecosystem too has lost 358 common zebra, 78 elephant, and 19 buffaloes, among other species.
It is the drought that has affected wildlife and livestock in the community conservancies in Kenya. Wild dogs and other carnivorous animals are left to feed on the carcasses before leaving the leftovers to dry up, backed up by the heat of the scorching sun. And with many wild animals moving to the community conservancies within the Amboseli ecosystem, this increases the burden on the pastoralist. Mzee Daniel Leturesh is a pastoralist who has lost a large percentage of his livestock in Meshenani area on the outskirts of Amboseli National Park.
Naona hii boma ni boma kubwa, kulikuwa na ng'ombe zaidi ya 800 na saa hii nimepoteza 60% already. Na zile imebaki ni ng'ombe, unaona vile iko. Ni ng'ombe tu kujishikilia, hata tunaelekea kupoteza karibu 80%.
Pastoralists in these areas have also witnessed wildlife deaths within the Amboseli ecosystem, especially in the community conservancies, after running away from the harsh conditions in the Amboseli National Park.
Which is giving us problems is lack of water. This place is water scarcity. So water is an issue where consistently we are having conflict between wildlife, especially now we are seeing cases where elephants are actually hitting livestock repeatedly, something which never used to happen. Elephants and livestock tend to live together, but nowadays we are seeing a case where elephants are like telling the wolf, get away, get out of the way, and we are seeing increasing cases of that. And that is because of this competition. There's no much to go by in terms of pasture and water.
Ukitembea hata unashangaa kila mahali unakuta mizoga ya wanyama. Hata wanyama kama ndovu tumeipoteza, hata saa hii inaweza fikia zaidi ya 400. Wale ambayo tulipoteza kwa idadi kubwa ni zebras na wildebeest.
A few kilometers away, we meet Letureshi's neighbors' children leading their few remaining livestock to find pasture in the Esiteti area near the Amboseli National Park. Their father is struggling to lift an exhausted livestock that could barely stand.
Imesafiri sana kwa sababu imekuja na hatujajua imekuja ikakuja kuchukua ng'ombe nyingi sana zaidi ya 120 yangu. Tulikuwa na ng'ombe 160, ikabaki 35 saa hii. Zingine zote zimekufa.
Kwa watu wetu watakuja kuumia sababu mategemeo letu ni mfugo, ni ng'ombe ya nyumbani. Hapa ukiona eneo hili hakuna kazi nyingine tunafanya tu ufugaji na pia wanyama pori. Sijawahi kuona kiangazi kama hii. Ile ambayo tunajaribu kufananisha ni 2008-09, lakini haijafikia mahali saa hii tuko. Kwa sababu unaona bado hatujapata mvua na maneno inazidi tu kuharibika.
Herders living near national parks are fearing for the worst as rains continue to be scarce and livestock, their sole source of livelihood, continues to die in mass.
Hali ya saa hii mvua imeteremka, maana kuanzia miezi iliyopita, yani ilikuwa mwezi wa 10, mvua ilikuwa ikuje na haijakuja.
Tumeanza kupoteza watu wengi. Mtu akiamuka akiona ng'ombe yake jana juzi walikuwa zaidi ya 300-400, hakuna kwa boma. Tumepoteza watu wengi. Mtu anapigwa tu na shock, hasa wale wazee. Najua watu hii kitu ambaye anategemea damu iko na uzito ingine.
Mvua haitakuja wakati ule inatakiwa kuja. Saa hizi tayari imechelewa. Na ilikuja kidogo. Na hatutarajii kwamba itakuja haraka vile kunakaa kumewaka jua. So tunaona kwamba siku za usoni zitakuwa mbaya.
Contrary to previous years, today's pastoralists have a clue to the effects of global warming and continue fighting the new challenges of the effects of climate change.
Ambiwa kuna climate change. Mabadiliko ya tabia hali ya nchi. Lakini tumekuja kuona ni kweli, ni real iko. Kwa sababu huwezi jua saa hii ni wakati gani itanyesha, ni wakati gani ya kiangazi. Najua zamani tulikuwa tunajua ikifika mwezi wa 9, 11 hapa itanyesha. Na tunajua tukifikia mwezi wa 4 tutakuwa na mvua mrefu. Saa hii hakuna.
Sasa hii mwezi wa 12 tumeingia kama leo. Ingekuwa imenona, tuuze mwezi wa kwanza, mwezi wa pili. Lakini saa hii climate change imekuja sababu mwezi wa 10 hakuna mvua. 11 inaendelea. 12 ndio hiyo. Kwa hivyo iko kitu kama hiyo.
While various international conferences are being held to draw policies to mitigate the severity and effects of climate change, what remains to be seen is the push through national policies and recommendations to alleviate the situation for posterity's sake.
We've also been coordinating of wildlife conservation and management partners to supplement government wildlife feeding and water tracking programs.
We are looking at carbon credits because all these trees are sequestering carbon, and those people who are emitting should pay for the cost of storing that carbon. And so carbon credits, we have conservancies, maybe about 40 conservancies now that are on carbon programs. All these programs are geared towards generating resources to go to the community and also to better manage the land, to do more dams, to do more water points, to have the diesel generators and the power systems that are running boreholes to supply water to wildlife, livestock, and the communities.
We've realized that the best option is not buying the cattle of the community. The best option is to actually train the community to understand better breeding, to understand climate change, to understand unpredictable seasons, and breeding better cattle, fewer cattle, but better cattle that can earn you more money.
We've got 120 students for scholarship. We've got the Jenga Mama program, which is empowering women to take care of themselves and be able to, bring some of the income, which is normally the domain of men. But now we're having ladies going out there and becoming employed, regular employment for ladies. In this case, then they are bringing income to the house, which means they do not have to depend on nature. So that is diversifying. So we have got the 85 rangers, community wildlife rangers. We have got the 60 Jengamama ladies whom we are training, whom we're going to equip and be able to give them business. And then we've got the 120 students who have now fledged off. And that, for us, we believe. And then, of course, there is the conservancy, which is now serving as a reserve for fodder for livestock as well as for wildlife at dry time.
Kenya is already bearing the brunt of climate change, whose adverse effects now impact every aspect of our economies and livelihoods. The climate crisis further complicates national roadmaps towards socio-economic transformation and impedes the achievement of sustainable development goals in our continent. The urgent actualization of this critical intervention offers humanity its best chance of prevailing in the existential contest with climate change-induced catastrophe. The good news is that the world has a golden opportunity to rapidly achieve these objectives by developing a robust, transparent, and sustainable mechanism through which a carbon credit market can yield attractive income and development opportunities for communities at the front line in the fight against climate change.
As you can see, these are carcass of a baby elephant that was reported to have died early November in 2022 at a time when the rainy season was supposed to start. As we speak, it's already December, but there are no signs of rains in this region. A clear sign that the effects of climate change are not only hitting on human and livestock, but now even the wildlife in this area. Ali Manzu, reporting for KTN News in Amboseli National Park, Kajiado, Kenya.